about it. I need to go home. But I need to go home. But I need to go home. She said about it. But I need to go home. But I need to go home. But I need to go home. She said about it.
Snipper.
Here.
Councilmember Wright.
Here.
And Councilmember Siemens will be here momentarily. He was here and had to go leave, pick somebody up. He'll be right back. Are there any council comments? Councilmember Wright. Oh, here it is.
A couple of things. One, I had a question for the city manager. A couple weeks ago now, I think it was the May 15th meeting, we asked that the city staff, and I think we got consensus from the my fellow council members, that we go and talk to EYA and the city planning department in D.C. About their plans for the development. I know we're waiting for WMATA to submit something to the FTA, but I was wondering if we have any update or if the city staff has had time yet to go and do that research and have those conversations.
No, I don't think the city staff has not had any conversations yet. I can ask Suzanne Ludlow to follow up with the district planning staff later this week, and we can report back next week to the council.
And EYA as well would be, I think, helpful.
Yes.
Great. The second thing was I learned two things at MML, which I thought were pretty pragmatic and interesting. One was doing more research on the Rainscapes Initiative, which is the Montgomery County initiative that allows individual homeowners and businesses to make improvements that would manage stormwater on their property. And I would very much encourage the city manager to have city staff to look at that more closely. I talked to the person who manages that program. They would be interested in partnering with the city, where they could potentially do the follow-up and inspection of people's properties to make sure that they were actually doing what they had agreed to do, and the city would be funding the improvements. So the way the program works is you actually have to get a real audit landscape architect and come up with plans, and then you submit those plans to the county. They may even be willing to do the approval process on the plans, and then you can get reimbursed up to $2,500 for those improvements. So I think that's something we should look at. And then the second one is around recycling, that I don't believe in our city we require apartment buildings or the businesses to do recycling. They do in the rest of Montgomery County, and I think, although that may be unpopular with some of our businesses and the apartment buildings, I think we should bite the bullet and look at passing a resolution that would demand that they do recycling just like the individual properties do around the city.
We've actually had some discussions, Councilmember Wright, it may have been prior to you being on the council, between our respective staffs in terms of amending the city code to actually have a provision where we would essentially adhere to the county's rules relative to commercial and multifamily residences. That's someplace caught between the two attorneys' offices, I believe, but I'll check and see where it's at.
That would be great. Then I want to talk a little bit about Montgomery College. Two things are on my mind about this. One is that the college has basically decided they're not going to go through the mandatory referral process in through the planning board. Normally, major projects like this would go through. I know they're not required to, and that process would be just a recommendation. But the last time they went through their plan, they submitted that for mandatory referral. And I think that we should ask them officially to do that again in writing by letter. And that's pretty straightforward. It's just asking planning professionals and the planning board to review the plans to see if they make sense with the surrounding environment and the regulations that the county has and that the city has. Now, given who they are, they're not necessarily required to abide by the recommendations of the planning board, but it does seem like we should have professionals give their opinion on that from the county. So if my council colleagues are in agreement, I think it would make sense that we draft a letter and send that to the college, asking them to voluntarily engage in that process. Do people generally agree with that?
Which process? This is the mandatory referral,
process.
Which is a review by Park and Planning of anything that the hospital proposes. That's what you're talking about.
I'm talking about the college.
The college.
But generally, any large plan, like the elementary school expansion, has to go through mandatory referral.
I'm surprised you're saying, well, I'm not that surprised you're saying this, but I'm a little bit surprised you're saying this because I have a pretty good recollection at some point, the college came to talk to us at a council meeting. I can see them sitting there, and the community members were unhappy that they hadn't been notified about a portion of the planning process. I'm sorry I don't keep up all the time on all of the components about this, but I remember that the residents were unhappy that they hadn't been included before this document was published and some of the planning that was done, and I should swear, I'm fairly positive that the college's reasoning behind that was that, well, it still had to go through the mandatory referral process, and even though we're not required to do that, we're going to do that with the neighborhood. Does anybody else remember that, or is that just me? Am I remembering something? Do you remember that? That was their argument, right? Yeah.
I recall that as well, but my understanding is that they, and Francis probably knows better than I do, they've recently said that they're not planning to submit that for mandatory referral.
Well, that just really blows their whole thing for why they didn't include the community on the front end of the planning process, now doesn't it?
If I can point out that we're going to have a presentation by the college on a facilities master plan update in 2 weeks, and my sense is that sending that letter could be one of the results of hearing their presentation.
The only thing is I would suggest maybe, and I'd be happy to do it, to call Dave Kapp, who's managing this process. I'd be worried that, 2 weeks doesn't sound that far away, but this is moving quite quickly, and I don't want to be in a situation where they say, oh, well, if you told us that earlier, we would have gone through mandatory referral, but now it's too late. So I think the sooner we can get it on record, if we all agree that it seems reasonable that they should go through mandatory referral, that we should have that letter in their hands and make sure that Dave and Dr. Stewart, we don't mean any disrespect by it, but we just want to express our opinion early on, or early as possible in the process.
Well, we can strengthen that by saying, now as Colleen points out, now, did you say you were going to mandatory referral? If we could find that document.
I think it's on streaming video.
And they certainly did the last time, so.
I'm glad to sign on to that recommendation, John.
I don't think we're going to find anybody disagreeing with that. So. Are there other council comments? Councilmember Siemens and then Councilmember Clay.
Thank you. Sorry to arrive late tonight. I just wanted to share a little bit of what I learned at the MML conference last week. I found it to be very educational. I really appreciated some of the sessions. It was nice to be able to network with some of our colleagues from other municipalities. One program that I wanted to mention to the city manager is I spoke with the Secretary of the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, Gary Maynard, from the state, and he offered, they're always trying to develop programs whereby they can teach trades and good work skills to those men and women who are incarcerated in our penitentiaries. And he has offered to sell trees to Tacoma Park at 35 cents per tree if we are interested. His requirement is that we have the city arborist develop a plan to increase or replace the canopy within the city, and as part of that plan to describe the types of trees and the number of trees that we would need, and he would sell them to us at 35 cents a piece, plant them in the in property that the state has available, and nurture those trees to a size that are adequate to plant in the city and then deliver them to the city. I'm not advocating for doing this at this point. I think it's worth checking out to find out what the story is. I think there are some questions regarding these programs that we need to understand better before we actually participate in this, but it sounded like a good opportunity that we should look into. The other one I wanted to mention is I attended a presentation by the U.S. Department of Justice on emergency preparedness for disabled and other people that have special needs. And I found that a lot of the information that they were providing was things that the Emergency Preparedness Committee for the city has brought up, and they seem to have good approaches to addressing those issues, not necessarily solutions, but they have some good ideas about how to include the community in preparing for any emergencies that might come up. And they have offered to come to the city to give a presentation. And I don't think that would be something we would have at the council, but I think it would be good for the Emergency Preparedness Committee and the police department and other city staff members who would be participating in those emergency planning. So I would get that information to you, Barb.
I have it. I went to the session.
Okay, great. And that's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Clay.
Let's see. We had some exciting code enforcement action in our ward, and an issue of someone stealing electricity and an arrest. And there's some concern from the neighbors that the house is vacant, and if we could follow up with that, that would be great. The Jackson Boyd Playground has been delayed due to some issues related to getting the right equipment, some of the adjustments that were made to the contract, which is fine, but it would be great if the city could message that to the residents rather than, I know that, there's people on the listserv, but if there's some way that we could broadcast that out to the residents. The July issue of the newsletter is already out, so I don't know how we do that, but if you think about something, that would be good, because I'm answering the calls one at a time is tiresome.
Maybe a sign posted in the park.
Hey, there's a good idea. Thank you. I continue to get questions about recycling improvements, and I know that we have talked to Public Works about this a few times, but I get a lot of folks who have the perception that the city's recycling program is kind of behind state of the art, and I actually don't know that much about state of the art recycling anymore. So, but I just want to say that I don't know if the other council members get this, but it's a continuing significant concern, and so we should either address the perception, or if we in fact are behind the state of the art, maybe we should make some investments in bringing ourselves up to speed on that. You have some knowledge on this?
As a result of several questions, I asked Daryl about it, and she said that we use the Montgomery County recycling services rather than having a separate contractor. We used to have a separate contractor. And so we're kind of constrained to use whatever they do, which of course raised an interesting question, because I heard that Montgomery County is going to expand to include an additional item, and I wondered if now we would be able to do that too. Yeah, could you check?
Okay. Yeah, in fact, it's that notice that they got from Montgomery County that prompted a whole new series of questions about why we're behind the times on this. Crosswalk at Jackson and 410. This request has been hanging around for a while. The state said they'd do it if we put in a curb cut. I think we put in the curb cut, and the crosswalk isn't there yet. And I crossed there instead of at Elm and Ethan Allen and walk farther, because at least there's a stop sign there and it's safer. But a stop sign and stop bars, or a stop sign and a crosswalk would be even better. And I know we're not legally allowed to go out and paint them on at midnight because it's a state highway. I'm not suggesting that, but maybe now that we've done what they asked us to and put in the curb cut, they could put in the crosswalk. And the last thing is, as more neighborhoods talk about traffic calming, which is just joyous to me, It always comes back to the 410 Carroll Tacoma Junction intersection. And so now I have a new group of folks talking about speed bumps and traffic calming, and they're, of course, coming to the same realization that every other block and neighborhood has come to one by one, that really the problems all emanate from the junction. And I know that Ward 3 had a meeting, but people in Ward 2 didn't think that that really applied to them because it had a name that had the Ward 3 group on it. So maybe it's time for the city to sponsor a community information session or some kind of a kickoff or something related to our campaign to make the junction function. That's it.
Councilmember Robinson.
I'm not sure if my correspondence with Daryl about the Rainscapes program got to you, Barb, or not. Daryl is I had a constituent ask about the Rainscapes program, and Daryl had some good suggestions and some concerns about funding, that $2,500, up to $2,500 a shot, multiplied many times, isn't in her budget right now. So I'll pass that email on to you and to the rest of the council to make sure we're aware of it. I'll note that all the businesses along Sligo Mill and Orchard are doing business recycling now, and kind of in anticipation of, knowing that again to you, Councilmember Wright, knowing that the business recycling in the county is going to be applied here, so they're a little bit proactive about that. And my experience is that other businesses will be glad to sign on once that becomes a reality. 4th of July is on Friday. I know that the Independence Day Committee is looking for more sales of raffle tickets, and that Bell Ziegler would be very interested in having other raffle ticket sellers along blocks all throughout the city. They have additional expenses this year because of insurance concerns. So I'll just bring that up. I also enjoyed the Maryland Municipal League conference in Ocean City last week. We didn't meet here because we were all there. It was great meeting other folks from other cities. And, we have a lot of cities nearby, not in our county, Montgomery County, but in Prince George's County. How many are there within 5 miles? 8, 10 little cities?
More.
And more. And I was intrigued. I met a number of council members and staff from those cities and had some good conversations. So I'm going to pursue that, even though it's not in our county, as sister cities down that direction. And finally, I want to tip my hat to the police department. They had a police banquet which I was invited to, and I'm thankful of that. It was a very good banquet and a real sense of camaraderie and achievement on their part. So just tip my hat to them. That's it.
I've got a couple quick comments. On the question about the state of the art on recycling, I know that one area where we appear to be ahead is on the fluorescent recycling. In the Big Cities Conference at MML, which we kind of qualify for. They say 20,000 and up is a big city, and we're 19,500, and they say, oh, please be sure that you come. You are a big city, even though you don't have the numerical count. You act like you're 60,000, not slightly under 20. There were questions about that, and I knew more about that program than anybody else. Nobody else had gotten as far with it as we have, so they were all looking to us for information. So we may be behind on some and ahead on others. I wanted to just note that today's Washington Post, the lead article, was about water bottles and the action of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I did sign on to that resolution for the U.S. Conference, and the article in today's Post made a pretty clear case why so many mayors and so many cities think it's so important to encourage people not to use bottled water. And for anybody who missed that article, I'm not in the habit of recommending Post articles, but that's a good one. So take a look at it. I'll also just note that I think the MML conference this year was very good and better than ones in the last couple of years that I remember going to, and had some real good sessions, and I was glad that all of us went. I believe that's the first time that the full council has gone in a number of years. Staff couldn't remember the last time that all 7 council members attended in 1 year. I'd also like to thank staff. I think the lead on this was Suzanne Ludlow. The signage inside this building and on the exterior of the building went up last week while we were at the conference. And when I came in this weekend to pick up my information for tonight, I was stunned at how nice the signage is. I really like it, really appreciate it. I have to say that the thought that I had was that I didn't think Tacoma Park could do something that nice, that well. My expectations are always high, but sometimes in signage in particular, we always have some issues. I think that we nailed it on this one, and the signage is wonderful. I know all of it isn't up. There's still some more, a last phase to come in, and then we'll see if there are any things that got missed in the process. But after having been utilizing the full building for what now, 2 years? It was nice to finally see the signage go in and not have to explain to people why there was no signage in the building telling them where to go, or it was just on little pieces of paper taped to the wall. So kudos for the whole process for the signage. Nice if it would have been a little shorter process, but sometimes good things take time. So if you can pass that along to whoever on the staff was involved in that, I think that was a great project. Any other comments? Councilmember Wright.
Just the one other thing I forgot to mention was to ask the mayor to make sure that we keep the mansionization issue
Yes.
on our radar screen. I know that we're not going to get to it before the recess, but definitely would like to see it as early on as possible. I know you're juggling a lot of things, but
Right.
just
And I went to the mansionization session at MML, and there was some very interesting information there as well. Councilmember Seen.
Since we're going to second round, I would just like to thank Councilmember Robinson for bringing up the need for salespeople for raffle tickets this year for the Independence Day celebration. Anyone who would be interested in helping to sell some of the raffle tickets can contact me at 301-565-0190. Thank you.
And Bruce?
Oh, boy. Oh, yes, yes.
New Hampshire Avenue, the new Ave, according to our, there we go, to our, the head of our Department of Housing and Community Development. All kinds of colors, great T-shirts. They're out there if you want one. Just give the city a call. It's the new New Hampshire Avenue. We have extra. Nice cotton.
Yes, and the logo will be appearing not only on T-shirts, but on signage, on garbage cans, on all kinds of things. Oh, and now we're going to get
Put mine on.
fully modeled one. Okay. Oh, Councilmember Barry.
Yes, the logo is available at tattoo parlors in Ward 6. Just two announcements. One is another day, another farmers market. Wednesday is the usual Crossroads Farmers Market starting at 4 o'clock. If you haven't been there yet, great homegrown vegetables and other food items with a sort of international flavor. So drop by Holton Lane between 3 and 7 Wednesday afternoon and pick up your organic produce. The other item, and this is for you, City Manager, we have a number of foreclosed properties in Ward 6, a sign of the times, and a number of constituents have called me this past week complaining about the high grass in the front, and in typical Tacoma Park fashion, one caller said, "I'll take care of it myself," when I get the power mower revved up over the weekend. I'm sure she did. But for some of those other places who do not have neighbors who are quite that aggressive, it's getting higher and higher, and I don't know what, if they've gone back to the bank, what we can do about it, but if we can check into that, because they say abandoned property all over them, and a number of neighbors are upset. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to reorder the agenda just a little bit. We're honored to have Montgomery County Council Member Valerie Irvin with us this evening. She has committed to coming to us, I believe, every other month and providing us with some updates and maybe taking a few questions. And we said that we would accommodate her schedule and try and get her on whenever she comes to the meeting. So if we can move to agenda item 1 for Councilmember Irvin, and then maybe she can go home and end her day a little earlier than if we kept her here longer.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the offer to come every other month. I'm happy to do it. Mayor Williams and all the city council members, it's great to be with you again. This is my second time visiting with you, and I was taking some notes as you were making your individual council member reports, and I want to start with foreclosures for a second. I recently asked staff at Park and Planning to give me a GIS map of the foreclosures in District 5, and it was really troubling to me to see the numbers of foreclosures in Tacoma Park. And we also know that by the month of August, by the time August rolls around, the banks are resetting the rates. And so we expect a huge spike in more foreclosures in the county in another month or so. So it was really troubling. We in the county, and I'm not quite sure how we can work with you in the city to do this, but the county, if you call Public Works and Transportation, they'll come and they'll cut the grass. And so I'm not sure how we could maybe arrange something between the county and the city, but it really is clear that if your next door neighbor is no longer living in the house, it's just dangerous to have your grass, getting tall and taller and taller, because that just begs for the kinds of crime that we're trying to prevent. So we can maybe have an offline conversation about how we might go about that. It really was pretty shocking, the numbers in Tacoma Park. And the other thing is I have two members of my staff in the audience that I wanted to introduce. One is Amparo Macias, who's been with me almost from the beginning of my term, who takes care of a lot of calls that come from all over the district, and she's gotten to know a lot of your constituents here in Tacoma Park, and she's with me tonight. And my newest staff member, who will begin working with me tomorrow, is Mr. Joseph Eong, who's sitting in the audience, and many of you know Joseph. He is a very well-known community activist, and he's going to be doing constituent service work as well, specifically targeting apartment dwellers. Many of you know we have a big problem of rising rents in some of our communities, and Joseph is no stranger to people all over this district who live in apartment buildings, and he's also going to be working with us on local small business, which my office has been really in the forefront to try to promote. Local First Initiative, which I got some money passed in this year's budget to expand the Wheaton Local First Initiative, and then to also begin one in Silver Spring and hopefully in Tacoma Park. So we're really excited about the prospects. So Joseph will be working very closely with all of you as we move forward on that. And the third thing that I picked up from just listening was Councilmember Wright's issue regarding the college and whether or not mandatory referral, whether or not you all are going to be sending a letter over to the college regarding mandatory referral. And this has been an ongoing conversation at the council, one which I brought up regarding the Silver Spring Library. When you're looking at public facilities and whether or not public facilities need to engage in the same way as the private sector in mandatory referral with Park and Planning, I believe that they do. I believe that they should. And in this particular case, you might want to get some information about at this stage of the game whether pulling mandatory referral, Park and Planning through mandatory referral is going to really delay that project and how much money that might cost to delay the project. I just wanted to put that on the table. Would love to have more conversations with you about that. I think you're right. In terms of the approach, we should have a conversation about how we might get them to the place where you want them to be. I'm not quite sure how far down the road they are on this project.
But it's not even a project, it's just their facilities master plan, which they redo.
Their master plan, okay.
So that's all, they've done it in the past.
Okay, then you should definitely push them on mandatory referral on that. I would agree with that, and if there's something we can do from my office, feel free to call and ask, and we'll be right there with you. As far as what I want to talk about today, it's a very small list, but a list that I think you all are very engaged in and very close to these issues, and one is the Piney Branch Pool, And you all know with the leadership on this city council, it was tremendous. Terry, I'm looking at you, and Councilmember Clay, and all of you who did, and the mayor, of course, a tremendous amount of advocacy on the part of this council to work with my council on getting the funding for the Piney Branch Pool. And so, as you know, there's going to be this analysis and an estimate of the pool's needs. Once that's completed, these repairs will commence, and that was a great victory. So congratulations on that. I want to talk a little bit about the ladder truck and public safety. Through my office, we really worked hard to secure the $1.8 million needed for the Hillendale fire truck, and that was a key issue for you all, so that they wouldn't be pulling from the city very needed support for fire and rescue. So we were able to secure that $1.8 million. That Hillendale fire truck is in place and will be there, as far as I know, for the foreseeable future. So we also work to restore other essential public safety positions. We work to fund 12 community outreach officers that were eliminated from the executive's budget in the tune of $623,000 that went back in. We also restored 20 officers to the January 2009 recruit class. So we feel like that was a huge victory for public safety, especially in this part of the county, and so I wanted to report that to you. And the proposed traffic restriction plan, and this came to me via Councilmember Siemens, the proposed traffic restriction plan for the Sligo Park Hills community and its impact on Tacoma Park and the Ritchie Citizens Association neighborhood. We've had many back and forth conversations, Terry, since you sent the email, which I appreciated. We went back and forth there. And the information that I have on that is that I've been in contact with the Department of Public Works and Transportation, and they're going to be holding a community meeting at the Ritchie Park community to discuss the recommendations regarding the Sligo Park Hills traffic restriction study. And I just want to point out that one of the things that we found were the conversations that should have taken place between DPWT staff and your staff here at the city. There was some sort of lapse of communication, it appears. So anyway, Mr. Khurshid Bilgrami at DPWT has been in contact with Ali. I don't know Ali's last name. Khalilian, the city engineer. And so, as you know, this study has been going on, according to Khurshid, since 2003. So these are balancing acts that we all know what this is like. We're trying to balance a whole lot of competing needs. So I'm happy to make sure that all sides have the opportunity to make comments. And again, I want to compliment and commend Councilmember Siemens for being right on top of this. And we since then have had very many conversations. So that's where we are on this, and I'm going to show up there at that meeting at the Ritchie Park community just to hear how it's all going.
Great.
Yes. Speed humps on Sligo Creek Parkway. I heard a little bit about that from Councilmember Clay, and who contacted our office with regards to the need for speed humps along Sligo Creek Parkway. We've been in conversations again with DPWT about the disposition of Sligo Parkway, who they've sent over a full report with recommendations from their consultants. And the study recommends an addition of 2 crosswalks along Jackson Avenue and Aspen Avenue. And these 2 crosswalks will be added during the resurfacing project this year. And there was apparently some misunderstanding that this section of Sligo Creek previously had these speed tables, but after checking with Park and Planning, they claim that there had never been any speed tables in that area. So I'll finish and then I'll let you comment. And so currently the section between 193 and New Hampshire Avenue are owned by Park and Planning, but are maintained by DPWT. And so any work or maintenance along this parkway needs to be recommended through Park and Planning, and DPWT is in charge of implementing the changes. And so I will end there and open up the floor to comments or questions.
Did you have comments on that?
Yeah. Yeah, there weren't speed humps there before, to my knowledge. What we were actually talking about was speed tables
Yes.
that would be in place where the crosswalks are at. So the crosswalks would become they'd be raised crosswalks.
Right, we talked
essentially
about the
across
speed
there.
tables. Apparently, where they want to place the speed tables are nowhere along Sligo Creek Parkway. They're actually north of, I don't have the map with me.
Yeah, she
Staff has
showed
the
it to
map.
me.
Yeah, so what they were talking about was putting the speed tables in north of Jackson,
They're talking about,
outside of the city. They're
Yeah.
outside of the city limits, yeah.
yeah, I saw the thing for rumble strips. My understanding is that my predecessor, Heather Mazur, went to the Department of Park and Planning to get an agreement to put in the raised crosswalks essentially. And my understanding was that they had agreed to that in a meeting that
Apparently,
they
they
had.
have amnesia on that point, because
So, well-
they don't appear to remember that conversation took place.
Well, I'll go back and talk to
Okay.
Heather, but I never saw it reflected then in the,
Okay.
in the maps either, but that's my understanding that that was the agreement. I think, as we've talked, there's some significant public safety issues there because we have kids waiting for the school bus along there. And the fact is, people go 40 miles plus an hour along there, so.
No, I'm with you on all
Yeah.
this. The trick here is how do you get what you want
Right.
in light of the fact that they have all these rules that they've established for themselves. And so I don't think it's a fait accompli. I think we just need to keep working on it together.
Well, I'll start by going back to Heather and asking her.
It would be good if
when
she's got a
she went and-
document
yeah,
or
exactly.
anything like that she can copy me. I would love to have it.
And thank you so much, because it's such a critical issue along Sligo Creek Parkway, both for the kids who stand on the side of the road waiting for the bus and for the people who try to get out of their driveways along what, was never really intended for the volume of traffic that it has now.
No, I really appreciate
Thank you.
how much you contact us about these really important issues, because we really do want to work together. I mean, I don't live very far from that area off of Sligo Creek Parkway, so anything we can do, I mean, we share the borders, so as far as I'm concerned, we're partners. Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens, you have a question?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank you so much for the work that you did to get the pool reopened at Piney Branch Elementary School. I thank you for your work, and of course George Leventhal and Mark Elrich for the help that they gave, and the entire county council. But I just want to remind the community of the great value that you brought to that initiative by coming to this council chambers the last time and talking about that issue and telling this council what we could do to help to make to strengthen your position and get the money that was necessary to reopen the pool. So thank you. And I also wanted to just thank you for the great amount of work that you put into the traffic issue in the Sligo Park Hills area. That was a surprise to us and a disappointment that the community wasn't more involved earlier in the process, but I thank you very much for getting that back on track, and I'm really pleased to hear that you're going to be able to attend a meeting with the Ritchie Citizens Association. The one thing that you didn't mention that I expected to hear tonight, and although it's not a Tacoma Park issue, but I think it's important and something that you should get recognition for, and that's the summer lunch program.
I was going to mention it. Thank you for reminding me. Today, we had a press conference. Actually, this is one of the most exciting things that I've been part of, and that is we launched today the first ever open site free lunch, summer lunch program in Montgomery County. And we got the idea by looking at what's going on in the District of Columbia. They are able to feed every single child during the summer in the district. And in Montgomery County, we have a growing problem of poverty. And so in a cluster of schools that we chose, which was the Kennedy cluster of schools, which is very much like probably your school, the clusters in Tacoma Park, where 50% of those children qualify for free and reduced meals. So there's no difference between the summer and the school year. These children still need lunch, and many of them still need breakfast. And so we were able to accomplish, with the help of Ike Leggett and Dr. Wiest, finding a site, Georgian Forest Elementary School, where no matter what child lives in that cluster of schools, we secured a school bus that is like a connector, and it stops at 8 different spots in that cluster, and they pick up children, they bring them to the school, they go into the cafeteria, and they eat lunch every single day, whether they're signed up for a summer program or not. And this is really exciting because we do know that this experiment is what it is. Already we're getting calls from all over the county saying, can you do this in my school? When can you come to my cluster? And so there's a price tag to it, obviously, but most of the money is federal money. And so we feel like we have a job to do, that there are children who don't stop being hungry just because it's June, July, and August. And so we were able to accomplish this. We're really excited that we worked with DPWT. They gave us money for a bus. The bus every single day will pick up kids Monday through Friday. And the thing about it is that if you are on a sort of reduced income, what happens during the school year, your children go to school, and many of them that qualify for lunch plans and breakfast plans get fed. You don't have to go to the grocery store and buy that food. So that really saved those families money. In the summer, you wonder what those families end up doing when they have to go deeper into their pockets to provide those 2 meals during the day when most of those parents are out working. So we were very excited. Ike Leggett came. There were like a whole lot of people showed up. And we can learn a lot from the District of Columbia who have a serious poverty problem, and it's moving in our direction. And
Well, I
so-
want to thank you for your
Thank
leadership
you
in
for
bringing that
mentioning it.
to the county, and I want this to be the official request, asking you, how can we bring that to our cluster?
I would love to bring it to Tacoma Park. As a matter of fact, I hope that we're here next summer. doing
And
the same
I trust
program.
that you will do the same as you did with the pool, and that is
Yes.
let this council know how we can support that and make you
If
successful
you all
here.
want it, it's coming your way. You
Thank
just
you.
have to let us know.
Thank you.
Councilmember Robinson?
Nice to see you,
Nice to
Councilmember
see you
Irwin.
again.
I'll just say briefly that I appreciate your work getting the Local First initiative down into Wheaton. We have, our mayor, Mayor Williams, has a little issue with the Local First. He thinks it should be shop locally first. But,
Shop locally first.
but
We
that's
can
not,
change the name.
that's not the name of the game nationwide, because I know this is a growing
Yes,
movement.
it's a movement.
And in fact, we have a shop local, or a shop local or local first week here in Tacoma Park that was initiated by our old Tacoma Business Association. And I know that the executive director there would be very happy to talk about extending
Great.
county efforts down into this part of this neck of the woods. And it may be that Councilmember Sniffer and Barry's commercial areas in the Crossroads and in Piney Branch Flower would be able to participate in that too, so that we could make it more of a citywide effort as opposed to where it is coming from now, which is just in our old Tacoma portion. And there's the farmers market that's just started in New Hampshire Avenue, which is definitely a local initiative. That's it. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for those comments, because a lot of people are just now getting up to speed on the fact that this Local First initiative is a national
Right.
program, and this is exactly the kind of community that it works well in. So I would love to partner with you and Councilmember Sniffer and Councilmember Barry on, the New Hampshire Avenue piece of it.
Oh, and one more thing. I have 3 T-shirts for the 3 of you.
Oh, aren't you?
And it's
I was
New
going
Hampshire.
to ask where to buy one.
No, there you go. And the New Hampshire Avenue is Councilmember Clay, Councilmember Barry, and I all have constituents along that stretch. So.
Great. The T-shirts are great.
Yeah.
It helps to promote business there, and that's what we're trying to do.
And then Councilmember Ray, Councilmember Sniffer, and then me.
I just want to thank you for 2 things. One is sending Ben Stutz to the Economic Restructuring Committee Main Street Initiative. We appreciate it. He was very helpful, and we look forward to working with you to figure out if there's ways to engage the county and the city efforts to help revitalize Old Town and down into the District of Columbia even.
Well, I'm going to have Mr. Eon working very closely
Great.
with you on
I
that.
appreciate it.
Yes.
And then the second thing is just to thank you for your advocacy on behalf of the residents of Victory Tower. We're trying to figure out a way to get direct metro access to our community center here. So I appreciate you helping put some pressure on Ride-On to look at altering the routes.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Snipper.
Yes, and I just have a quick thank you also for your efforts to...
I got to come here more often.
We were advocating for a little piece of sidewalk on the other side of Flower, the non-Tacoma Park
Yes.
side of Flower, and I really appreciate your help in getting it finally in the CIP. So that's going to be really good.
We
I'll
are
probably
so
be
excited
long
about
God
that.
when it finally gets done.
Long
but at
time
least
coming.
It's a long time coming. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
And I've just got two quick things. One, on your bringing up about the ladder truck and Hillendale, I know that where the problem for us is going to come is 2 years from now as the Tacoma Park Fire Station 2 is completed, and then that gets to the time where the County Fire and Rescue Service has kind of talked about, well, then, you know, the ladder truck that was at our station that moved to downtown Silver Spring, that would be the time to discuss it coming back once there's a new station. And so that's going to be the budget discussion for, I guess, FY11. And we know from past experience that every time there's an issue with fire and rescue service and equipment and facilities, that we always have to do battle. And I anticipate that we will have to do that then. We'll have to immerse ourselves in the trivia of north-south versus east-west alignments for equipment. And we look forward to working with you and other council members between now and then, and particularly at that point, to make sure that we get our ladder truck 2 back again. I see it
I have to
driving
tell
all
you,
over.
though, Mayor, you have a lot of support on the council, because during budget, when Chief Carr came before the council, he didn't exactly get an easy way out.
I know.
And so I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah, I was there for the committee discussion and heard some of the questioning of how things were going, and I know that you and your colleagues don't want to take equipment from one area of the county to service another area of the county that has expanded and needs the equipment.
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, if you know about the development that's going to occur up on New Hampshire Avenue North to FDA, it would be ridiculous to remove the Hillendale ladder truck. 10,000 employees, maybe more than that, are expected when they're done with that facility to be working there. And so now more than ever, they have to really be thinking, 10 years, maybe 15 years ahead when they place these trucks and where they're going to place the fire station. So I think he's sort of lost on that round. And so I think Tacoma Park is in a good situation right now.
Good. And the other thing was, I know that we were going to try and get together with you about figuring out whether you could establish some office hours here. I don't know where that is, but...
Well, Mr. Young's the one that's going to be in need of the space, and so we just haven't had the opportunity, and now he's on board, so we'll come back by, and I really appreciate the offer. We want to be able to house our office here in Tacoma Park, since we spend so much time down here, so we might as well live down here with you. We would really appreciate that.
And we look forward to seeing you for some of that office
Great.
hour, too.
Yeah, I'll be down here. I'm down in Silver Spring all the time, so I might as well split some of that time
Right.
at Tacoma Park.
Good, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll be happy to give you kudos whenever you come.
Oh, it's good to feel the love every now and then. So thank you all very much for all your hard work. We really all appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing staff with you.
Yeah.
Okay, now we will go back to where we were in the agenda. I have nothing for the record, so we'll go back to adoption of minutes for May 5th, 8th, 12th, and 15th. Do I hear a motion to adopt those minutes?
Moved. Second.
Any comments, any changes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. A quick sense of where we are on agenda, just to point out that next Monday, the 7th, we have a work session with the discussion of council priorities and strategic planning. We also have a scheduled update from Montgomery County Councilmember Mark Elrich, who also wants to apprise us of issues from his point of view at the county. And then on the following Monday, the 14th, we're going to have a discussion of the of revisions to the ethics code to see if we can maybe take care of some of the issues that prevented Councilmember Wright from voting on the budget. And as I mentioned earlier, the presentation on the Montgomery College Facilities Master Plan update. And then we have tentative work session items on the Tacoma Metro and the issue of policy for providing grants to nonprofit organizations. And we're scheduled to go through the month of July. We have a discussion of Recreation Department on the 21st. And then on the hopefully final meeting before we go on break for August, one of the items that we will be having is an update from Verizon, at which time they will hopefully be telling us that fiber has been installed in all of Tacoma Park, and we will hear about that and the opportunities for additional ways of getting information. So that's where we are on upcoming agenda items. We're now at the time for public comment period, which is time for anybody who has any comments on any non-voting items on this agenda or anything not on this agenda. So if you have any comments for the resolution on foie gras, or I guess that would be the only item not commentable at this point, and we will now proceed with comments, and if you can please keep your comments to 3 minutes. And welcome, Mr. Lovelace.
Yeah, my name's Pat Lovelace, 7620 Maple Avenue, Tacoma Park, Maryland. I would like to let you people know that we are having ongoing vigils and fasting going on at the Supreme Court to protest the death penalty. Of course, Maryland still has it on the books, and I understand that Jamie Raskin is forming a commission to try and see if we can get rid of that. And I think we should all try and support him on that. But also, it would be great, since Tacoma Park is known for its activism, we need as many people down there as possible. We haven't had too many people down there today. We only had like about 18 and 20. And that's a pretty sad turnout. You know, if people are against the death penalty, they should be coming out and voting with their feet also. And also, if they're against the war, we need as many people out there as we can. Because our government is not just going to listen if nobody speaks up, you know. And Tacoma Park is well known for its activism, and I'd like to see them getting out there and be active. It's summertime; they can't say the weather's too cold now. There's no football games on, so we need as many people out there as we can get. Also, talking about activism, I'd like to see, now that the school is out, you know, it'd be nice to see if we can encourage the kids to come down to some of the council meetings to see how their government works, you know, to see their government in action, so that they'll be better equipped to maybe run for office later on, maybe even when it's time for them to vote. But I also understand we got over 2,000 new voters this year. You know, I heard Terry Siemens was telling me we got over 2,000 new voters this year, you know, registered to vote. And again, I think we should always be aware of that we do need to get people registered to vote if we want to have a good president this year. You know, and I'd like to see Tacoma Park with 100% turnout if possible. It would really be nice. You know, it'd make life easier for me and everybody else. You know, if I can do it, hey, anybody else can do it. And it's good to see that. And I'd like to see kids coming out now and to see how our government works, and also maybe even participate. You know, like the Young Activists Club, they've put in a lot for our city. And also the 4th of July is coming up. And maybe we can get as many people down there at the 4th of July parade to see our city doing something good. You know, come on down and enjoy it. You know, it's not all work, it's not all this, it's not all that, but it'd be great if we can have a good turnout this year. You know, maybe we can have a voter registration table down there at the folk festival and at the parade. You know, because you don't need to be carrying a gun or a weapon to be fighting for your country. You can fight for your country by coming down and speaking out against the horrors of the death penalty and against the war that we've got going on. You know, we need to put that money in better places than that, toward healthcare and education, toward research. We don't need to be throwing it away on war to get our troops killed, you know, and be lied to. We don't need that. We need to get a better president in office. We need to get better people out there to speak up, and we need to speak up for ourselves. If we want that war to stop, we got to speak up. If we want the death penalty to stop, we've got to speak up, because they're not going to do it for us. You know, we've got to realize that. So if we can get people out there, we need people out there. We only had about 18 or 20 down there today, and the weather was pretty good. I'd like to see hundreds down in front of the Supreme Court this time, because there are people down there fasting, there are people down there vigiling, and we need as many people down there as possible to speak out against the horrors. Those inmates are human beings. They're not just pawns to be played with, you know, to get on their, you know, their agendas better, to get more votes. Those are human beings. They've made a mistake. They've done something wrong. But we do not have to stoop down and do the same thing. Killing is not the answer. We need to speak out against that death penalty. Help Jamie Raskin put an end to it. In Tacoma Park, we need to see you people down there. We need to see as many people down there as possible. And it's going to be going on tomorrow and the next day. So we need to get as many people down there. Thank you very much. Thanks for letting me share. Come on, everybody. Come on out there and vote with your feet.
Thank you, Mr. Loomis. Is there any other public comment?
Good evening, Francis Phipps, 7210 Holly Avenue. I'd like to start by thanking Josh for his very timely remark on mandatory referral. I was quite encouraged by her comment that as long as it's master plan, they would push for that. I just want to give you a brief update on what was announced by the college regarding its expansion plans. You know, this plan has been in the works for about 4.5 years, and with 5 days' notice, they held their community briefing last Tuesday night, to present two basic options. I provided you 3 illustrations in that packet. I'd like to just call your attention to the very first one, which is the illustration from 2002, which actually was one of the reasons it did go through mandatory referral, and Parkland Planning at that time said they ought to start shifting their focus from the eastern campus, which is our core campus, to the western campus, which is the Georgia Avenue, Burlington Street area. They did do that and have been doing that with the singular massive exception of the Student Services Center, which they put on the core historic campus in Tacoma Park. I'd like to call your attention on this particular 2002 illustration. In the top left-hand corner, you'll see the Cultural Arts Building, and next to it, an academic building with parking below. You will also see the alignment of the Science and Math, proposed Science and Math Center on Fenton, and the Student Resource Center on New York Avenue. If you turn the page to the option they presented last Tuesday night, you will see the identical presentation, 5 years of planning later, with one substantial difference, in that the corner that used to say academic building with parking below on Burlington and Georgia now says temporary parking lot, future foundation building. And the college, as you know, has the Montgomery College Foundation. And this foundation, they say, has indicated that that site which is an approved buildable site, is now to be dedicated to retail and condominium development. That is a substantial change. Other than that, this is identical to the plan of 5 years ago. This is not a plan. This is a Xerox. There's one other thing that should be pointed out. In Block 69, some of you may remember in February, David Kapp made the announcement that there would be no new buildings on Block 69 east of New York Avenue in the residential historic neighborhood. However, on this plan here, on option 5, it says the Black Box Theater, and frankly, I have mixed emotions about this. I think the Black Box Theater must be one of the most creatively ugly buildings that I have ever seen. So the fact that they want to tear it down, I think, is actually a cause for rejoicing. The fact that they want to put something new on there without design standards, which we recommended as McNack, as your advisory committee, is of some concern. I frankly, and I'm speaking personally here, I personally believe that as long as the college owns property in the historic residential neighborhood of Block 69, this is a neighborhood at risk. I think it's one thing to rejoice. They did indicate, as we had recommended, that they vacate the residential property on the corner of Philadelphia and Tacoma, which is being used as a child care facility, and they are relocating it into the 2 small pavilions, P1 and P2, on New York Avenue. So if you look at the next one, option 6, it's essentially the same. They have just moved the boxes in a different way. I'd like to call your attention to the consultant's comments on the side, on the legend side, where he's talking about the cons of this proposed approach. He says the Resource Center, Library and Science and Math Center will require tricky phasing. Such projects will need to be phased. They are very large. They must tear down existing buildings to replace them. There will be enormous problems of scheduling and classroom disruption. Our recommendation is, of course, that they off-site major development. What we are talking about in this plan is a proposal for 250,000 square feet of new development. Of that, on the core historic campus, they are proposing 220,000 square feet. Just for reference, those of you who have seen the Students' Arts Center is 100,000 square feet. The Math and Science Building they are proposing is for 120,000 square feet, 20% larger than the massive Student Services Center now at the corner of Fenton and New York Avenue. Directly in front of one of the most historic residences in Tacoma Park, one of the most beautiful, they are proposing a building of 80,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet less than the Student Services Center. Again, I'd like to reemphasize this is massive development on the core campus with a very small footprint. Off-siting the Math and Science Center of 120,000 square feet to that approved building site that they already own relieves all that development pressure that is condensed there. It allows them to build the building all at one time while keeping the classroom teachings going on during the construction phase. It would represent significant financial savings, and I think we ought to explore that. One last thing, to give credit where credit is due, they did show a third option, which for the first time indicated the possible purchase of the extra storage facilities, which citizens in North Tacoma have been requesting for at least 10 years, and that your McNack committee made one of its primary recommendations, that they look to expand in a non-impact way into these large facilities. They indicated that, and of course, the citizens that were there at the time were thrilled. However, David Kapp made it clear within a few minutes that this was really not an option for this next 10 years, that they only could propose development on land they owned. Actually, that makes a lot of sense. But they do own another site. And they also said that they would put in a request in the CIP for funds to do research for acquiring the extra storage facilities. I think that the council will have a great deal to discuss with the college when they come in and make their presentation in the upcoming sessions. So I've taken long enough, but if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Okay, then, City Manager, have any comments?
I'll just be brief. I know we're running behind. Just wanted to take the opportunity to thank those residents who participated in the neighborhood cleanup along New Hampshire Avenue this Saturday. I believe Councilmember Robinson was one of those residents who helped out. And also just wanted to publicly thank Dunkin' Donuts, which provided refreshments for the event. At the council's place at the dais this evening, I did leave a copy of an article from Saturday's Washington Post about the bathroom poetry project. You can read more about this on the city's website, but there will be poems installed in several of the bathrooms for our city facilities, including this building, the library, the Hefner Community Center, and the Recreation Center on New Hampshire Avenue, if poetry is your thing, and especially an unusual place. And last, a couple weeks ago, I had mentioned to the council as part of the our new process of providing the council with a breakdown of crime information was certainly one of the statistics that was somewhat alarming to the staff was the percentage of crime that we were seeing in Ward 6. As I had mentioned at that time, the chief and I have talked about the department doing some special details in Ward 6 to try to address that issue. And on the 23rd, the council should have received a copy of a news release sent out by the police department reflecting some of the results of a special detail that the department did along the New Hampshire Avenue corridor. It ran from June 16th until June 20th. One of the council's goals has been to increase police visibility in a different way, so as part of that detail, there were 5 hours of foot patrol, and in the news release that was sent out to the council and to the community, there's a fairly detailed listing of the activity from that special detail. So I did just want to take the opportunity to publicly thank Chief Ricucci and the 4 officers who participated in that, and we will be running similar details in the future. So that's it, unless there's any questions about anything.
Thanks. We will now move to agenda item 2, which is presentation on Montgomery County Foster and Adoptive Parent Services. And let me just say that this came about because the Council of Governments is one of the sponsors of a wonderful event every year that recognizes foster parents in the Washington area. And Councilmember Siemens and I always go to that. And when we did, we sat with a number of folks from Montgomery County, and I had some conversations with them and said, gee, how many foster households are there in the county, and how many do you need? And when I heard about the gap, I said, well, there might be an opportunity to try and publicize and find some foster parents in Tacoma Park, and so invited you folks to come from Montgomery County and tell us about what's going on. So if you'd like to introduce yourselves and tell us what we need to know.
Absolutely. My name is Jean Booth, and I am one of the supervisors with Child Welfare Services here in Montgomery County. And I'm here with Linda Gore, who is Montgomery County's recruiter for foster and adoptive parents. I'd like to begin by thanking you all for, each and every one of you, for the opportunity to come and speak to you about the need for more foster parents in Montgomery County. We both work with Child Welfare Services on their mission to preserve families and build stronger communities, and when that's not possible, we work with our community with their foster parents to keep the children safe and nurtured while we work with the families to reunite them. Just briefly, Child Welfare Services responds to up to 1,000 calls each month from concerned citizens in the community that are worried about the safety and welfare of children. We're fortunate that many of those calls we're able to respond to with either information or referring for other services. However, we do have to investigate when there is a high risk for safety of the children. And at times, we have to remove children and place them in foster care. I've given you in your packet, actually, a description of the different types of child abuse and neglect, just so that you'll have that. We weren't prepared tonight to speak to that directly. Yet it is in that packet, the white sheet. In addition to a What's the Buzz brochure, which talks about what the rules are and the laws are regarding leaving children alone. We get lots of calls about that, so I just wanted you guys to have our latest information about that. As I said, the majority of children are able to be served in their home, but at times they are removed from their parents' care and placed into foster care. Typically, there are around 325 children removed from their parents and placed in foster care each month in Montgomery County. Those aren't new cases, those are existing cases, so it could be the same children from month to month. Some of those children are in congregate care or group homes. The majority of them we're fortunate to have placed in family settings. Our primary goal is to keep them with families, so we have kinship families, and then we look to place them in their community in foster homes. Linda and I are representing the Foster and Adopted Parent Services Unit at Child Welfare Services, where we work to develop these community resources. And you additionally have a piece of paper that describes the varying types of foster care that are available so that children can be kept in family settings. And we've come tonight to discuss our need for foster parents, and Linda's going to talk a little bit about recruitment in Montgomery County and the work that she does. And then we'll answer questions.
Okay, great, thanks.
The way people find out about becoming foster parents, there's two main ways, and that is by calling 240-777-1664, and then once someone calls that number, they get a call back within 24 hours and a package of information in the mail about foster care and adoption too. Another way to access information about how to become a foster or adoptive parent with Child Welfare Service is by going to the county website and to our portion of the county website, and that is www.montgomerycountymd.gov/kidsneedyou. And there's a lot of information on that site. And as well, people will find there the same list of information meetings that are on the purple sheet in the pack, the little purple strip like this that's in the pack that we gave you. We actually have these information meetings in Rockville every month, but to be convenient for the whole county, we have two others as well. So we have one very close to here, just over the border, over your border on Georgia Avenue in Silver Springs. We have a Silver Spring meeting every month. We have the meeting in Rockville every month, and then for the North County folk, we have a meeting in Germantown every month. They're always in the evenings when most people are off work. And at those meetings, we talk about what the process is, how the licensing process works, and what our needs are, and get people started. So that's how we reach out to the community. If you ever have opportunities where we can come and speak to people in some way to come apart, please be sure to alert us. We have, I can come down, Ms. Booth can come down, we have other staff that can come down for specific events, if that would be something you'd like to do.
One of the things that Linda talks about in the meetings are to let people know that there are a number of ways that they can help in the community. If they're interested in foster care, a lot of people are concerned about the time commitment, so we want to explain to folks that there's opportunities for people to help just for a weekend, there's opportunities for people to help just for a few hours doing respite care. through long-term foster care and then adoption as well. In your handouts also, you have, some people are not ready to make the commitment to take a child home, but there are many different ways that you can also help with foster children. You have a green sheet that talks about the various ways that you can help, that range from things like donating birthday bags so children that are in foster care can have cakes and balloons and things like that, all the way up to donating in the name of a family member for scholarships for graduating high school seniors, through donating financially to our appreciation events that we have each year at Smoky Glen Farms, or we have other adoption appreciation events every year in November. So there are many, many ways that people can help. And there's lots of us that are willing to come out and talk to whoever would like to hear us about ways that you can help the foster children in Montgomery County. So,
What kind of shortfall do you have in terms of your needs and who you actually have?
We have actually right around 290 families in Montgomery County, and if you remember, I told you that there's roughly 325 kids in care. Ideally, we'd like to have a selection of families. So ideally, we'd like to have roughly 350 families to choose from, so that we can match children appropriately to families that look like them, that talk like them, that worship like them. So we really, really do need to have a more diverse selection of foster families. So we're roughly 50, 60 families shy of what we'd like to have, but ideally, the more the better it is, the more that we have. So we'll take as many as we can get.
And are there, would you characterize Tacoma Park as having about the number that you would expect within the county, or more or less? Or
We've got a very small but very strong contingent of fabulous foster families from Tacoma Park. I think that as the county grows, we're looking to have more. I think we could use to have several more in Tacoma Park. That would be my guess.
And is it helpful to have foster families not too far away from where the kids live?
Exactly. Where they live, where they go to school, where they worship, where they can continue to go to Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, continue to use the pool when it's open, that kind of thing. We like to have children remain as close to their community as they possibly can, so that they can maintain those connections, because that's very traumatic for children. They've already been disengaged from their biological family, but they also lose their friendships and their teachers and all of the other connections they have. So it's very important for us to keep kids in their community.
And can you just say a little bit about the types of people? I'm thinking about the kind of, I'll call it the types of families who can be foster parents. I know people would think, mother and father and blah, 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 but, what kind of what opportunities there are for various people in various situations to be foster parents.
That's a great question. And like Ms. Booth said a moment ago, we work so hard all the time to get the most diverse group of foster families humanly possible. There's certain requirements set by the state. You have to be 21. You have to have income to cover your own expenses, because the state reimburses families for the child's expenses, but there's no salary. It's not a job. So some of those kind of requirements. But beyond that, we have a lot of flexibility in Montgomery County, in the whole state of Maryland. We have single foster parents, married foster parents in unmarried relationships, extended families, where there might be a father or mother and an adult daughter or son that are living together that are fostering. We are open to family constellations across the board. Gay and lesbian couples and singles are welcome. So we really don't have a lot of limitations. We want families that can speak other languages, families that are familiar with other cultures, that know how to cook foods from other countries. We're always looking for people with, oh my gosh, we get calls from time to time for families that speak Urdu, whatever. So please, the great diversity of Montgomery County is represented both in the children we serve, and it is, but it still needs to always be represented in the foster and pre-adopted families that we are working with.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Stevens.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for coming here tonight. Having attended the annual festivities put on by the Council of Governments, I've become well aware of both the need and the great benefit that the foster parents get. Many of them start out to do something good and find out that they are the beneficiary.
Right, absolutely. You hear that a lot.
Thank you for coming tonight. I hope the community listens to this and that you get some inquiries and find some families here in Tacoma Park.
Well, we thank you very much for having us.
Thanks for the time.
And it's really heartening to see the benefits that Councilmember Siemens talked about for the foster parents as well. I've seen where people who have been honored at that gala have had upwards of 20 or 30 foster children, and in many cases put most or all of them through college.
Exactly.
It's just amazing to see. And one of the things that we have at our places is the video from that gala that shows all of the foster parents. It's very interesting to look at, and also the Council of Governments Regional Foster Care and Adoption Report, which is also very interesting and gives a lot of information.
Excellent.
I think it's also interesting in talking with some of the foster parents at the gala to learn that many people probably self-limit themselves from applying, thinking that, well, I'm a grandparent, I can't do it, or I'm single, I can't do it. There's a complete variety of backgrounds and experiences.
Absolutely.
We have no age limit to be foster. There's no age limit to be foster parent. You can be a foster parent. If you're 21, we don't have any upper limit.
Right.
Councilmember Snipper.
Well, I was sitting here reflecting on my own personal experiences. I spent some time in group foster care when I was little, and I'm very grateful to the families, people that took me in, and I just feel really delighted to hear the active program in Montgomery County, and I too followed what's happened at the Council of Governments as well. And I do hope that other families will step up, and you don't have to make a long-term commitment. It can be, you can do it for a little while, you can do it for a long time. It's a great experience. Thank you.
Thanks very much for coming and
Thank
sharing
you.
information, and I hope we can scare up a few good prospects.
We'll let you know who calls.
Great, thanks. The next item on our agenda is, on our regular meeting agenda, is agenda item 3, which is a resolution opposing the abusive factory farming practice of force-feeding ducks and geese for foie gras. And if I can just say that I was contacted, and I know that my colleagues were contacted by a number of residents in the city who felt that this was an important issue. And I know that we don't necessarily have restaurants in Tacoma Park that are serving foie gras, and I don't know how many residents we have who eat foie gras, but I think it's important to recognize that there are issues that we need to publicize and educate on, and we have a number of residents who are active with the Humane Society, and also I got to come up with the
Compassion Over Killing?
Thank you. And so when residents of the city point out something that needs to be addressed, we're happy to do that. And so we have a resolution in front of us, and I know we have some residents here who want to speak to it. So maybe if somebody would like to introduce the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Snipper, seconded by Councilmember Wright. Are there any council comments on this, and then we will take public comment? Councilmember Wright.
I just had two questions. Maybe we're legally limited in doing this, but I don't. Could we add to legally, if we wanted to the resolution, two things? One would be that it would be illegal to sell foie gras in Tacoma Park, and the second would be that it would be illegal to consume it.
I don't know. I think the word that comes to mind is enforcement. And I know that restaurants are inspected by county health department.
Yes, but like many things we do, we're sending a message. We may not be able to go around and enforce in every restaurant, but if it's known, we could put it in a newsletter, we could do a mailing to restaurants so that they were aware of it. I think just that, in addition to it saying that we think it, we're saying here it shouldn't be produced, and we oppose the production and sale of, we should say in our own town that it's actually illegal. So I understand that maybe we have to check with the city attorney to see if we actually have the power to do that. And enforcement is another issue. I don't necessarily think we should be sending police officers into restaurants to check to see if people are eating or serving.
Or people's homes?
Or people's homes. But I think officers need to be focused on violent crime in the streets, but I do think that it sends a clear message.
So maybe it sounds like if we want to do that, we would need to consult with the city attorney.
I think that's correct. I'm not sure if we actually legally have the ability to ban the sale. That's certainly something staff could follow up with the city attorney's office. I think the council has two choices. You can either pass the resolution that's before you this evening while we do that research, or you could hold up another week or so for the city attorney's office to provide that guidance, and then if it is legally possible, the council could amend the resolution before you act upon it.
I agree. So at this point, it's a question, it's not an amendment. Councilmember Clay.
I support your sentiment, but I don't want to pass a law knowing that we have no intention of enforcing it, just as on principle. But I would certainly support the banning the sale of it, in restaurants and in supermarkets, and banning serving it in restaurants. Absolutely, I would absolutely support that. But I don't think I could go with supporting the ban on eating it, although I think it's disgusting and cruel, along with veal and several other things. So, but I don't want to pass something that we have no intention of enforcing.
Councilmember Robinson.
Yeah, I also have concerns about passing laws that we can't enforce. I do think that this it's something that doesn't have a lot of direct impact in Tacoma Park, and I've heard from constituents that we could spend our energies elsewhere with better effect, particularly in environmental issues. And but I see a linkage between them. It's how we've, as people, have pushed the limits into areas that are doing either ourselves or animals harm. So I'm a proponent of this resolution, and I'll just leave it at that.
So nobody wants to speak up in favor of diseased livers?
No.
Is there public comment on this resolution?
Hi, thank you. My name is Erica Meyer, and I am a resident of Tacoma Park at 7131 Sycamore Avenue. And I also am the executive director of Compassion Over Killing, which is a nonprofit animal advocacy organization based here in Tacoma Park. And I'd like to thank you, Mayor Williams, for putting this on the agenda tonight, and Councilmember Snipper for introducing it, as well as Councilmember Wright's proposed amendment to ban the sale of foie gras, in addition to the current resolution which bans the production, opposes the production of foie gras in Tacoma Park. Just to briefly summarize and keep my testimony very brief, the practice of force feeding ducks and geese for foie gras is cruel and inhumane. In order to cause the birds' livers to swell to a diseased state, which is the goal of foie gras production. A tube is shoved down the birds' throats, and large quantities of food are pumped into their stomachs. And as a former animal control officer in Washington, D.C., I can say with certainty that if these same abuses were inflicted upon the dogs and cats with whom many of us share our homes, it would lead to criminal prosecution. And in fact, foie gras is so cruel that the production and sale of it has already been banned in more than a dozen countries worldwide, as well as in the state of California. And by passing this resolution tonight, Takoma Park has the opportunity to take a proactive and a compassionate step by sending a message that this form of animal abuse is too appalling for any civilized society to condone. So thank you so much for your consideration, and I do urge you to pass this resolution.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Paul Shapiro, and I have been living in Ward 3 for the last 7 years, most of my time under the leadership of then Councilmember Williams. So I applaud you on your ascension to the mayor, and now I'm a loyal subject of the new Robinson administration. So I appreciate your support for this resolution as well.
You get
and
a T-shirt for that.
In addition to being a Takoma Park resident, I'm also a spokesperson for the Humane Society of the United States, the largest animal welfare organization in the country, which is actually headquartered in Montgomery County, out in Gaithersburg. And the Humane Society of the U.S. endorses this resolution for the very reasons that you just heard. This is an extraordinarily cruel and inhumane practice. It has already been banned throughout the state of California, and other city councils are weighing in on this as well. For example, earlier in the year, the City Council of San Diego passed a very similar resolution, urging consumers not to buy the product, urging restaurateurs not to sell the product, and just opposing this cruelty because it's so outside of the bounds of what we would ever consider appropriate treatment of animals. So on behalf of the Humane Society of the United States, I thank you for considering this resolution and urge you to pass it.
Thanks. Is there any other public comment on this resolution?
Since I'm already here, I'm Ann Sargent in Ward 3. I am just curious, is it legal to even keep ducks and geese in Takoma Park? I'm a vegetarian, by the way, and I think it's cruel, but I just wonder if a person can even keep ducks and geese to be able to produce foie gras in Takoma Park.
I actually know the answer.
If you know the answer, please share.
Oh, good.
No. No, you're not permitted to keep farm animals in your residence here. But I think that the purpose of this resolution is not necessarily to prohibit the cruelty from occurring in Takoma Park, since that would be unlikely to happen here or in any other city, since most cities don't harbor factory farms, but rather to let the residents of the city know that the council opposes supporting this practice, because while the cruelty may not be happening within our confines, residents of the city could go out and purchase foie gras either here or elsewhere. They could go down to D.C. and eat at a fancy restaurant. And when we pay people to commit these acts of cruelty against animals, it's essentially, they're our hitmen. I mean, we pay them when we buy foie gras. And so the problem isn't occurring within the city, but the problem could occur when residents of the city purchase this product of animal abuse.
And I would imagine that even though it's not legal to keep farm animals in the city, that might not prevent people from keeping some, since I know that chickens and roosters have been here and have been welcomed. So there's...
Roscoe would approve of this resolution.
Yeah, there you go. Any other public comment?
Thank you, Mayor Williams and council members, for hearing what I have to say tonight. I've actually prepared something. I didn't want to forget anything I had to say because it's so important to me. I live at 222 Park Avenue, and as a Takoma Park resident who stands against cruelty toward animals and for the promotion of healthful and humane lifestyles, I commend the council's consideration of this important resolution. The term inhumane can only mildly begin to describe the grotesque cruelty inflicted upon countless birds in the production of foie gras. It is unimaginable to think that ducks are forced to eat the equivalent of more than 40 pounds of pasta per day for an average-sized man. Even though I've seen the gruesome results on video with my own eyes, it is unthinkable to think that anyone would intentionally and deliberately make an animal suffer so immensely. It wouldn't be unthinkable, however, to consider the consumption of the liver of these diseased birds could possibly cause adverse effects on human health. I recently read a Washington Post article describing a recent study from the University of Tennessee. And this study described the possible link between the consumption of foie gras and the acceleration of diseases such as diabetes, arthritis, and Alzheimer's. It urged people with a family history of these diseases not to consume foie gras. And I later learned that this is because the foie gras ducks and geese are intentionally overfed to produce a fatty liver disease called hepatic lipidosis. And that results in the contamination of the so-called delicacy that arrives on dinner plates. Therefore, cruelty isn't the only reason why I oppose foie gras. It can also be detrimental to human health. Foie gras production has already been outlawed in the United Kingdom, Germany, the Czech Republic, Finland, Luxembourg, Norway, Poland, Sweden, Switzerland, Denmark, and Israel. And as was mentioned earlier, California has also recently passed a law which will make it illegal to sell or produce foie gras in the state. I am proud to live in a place that is known for demonstrating through its actions that it opposes inhumanity everywhere and that it cares about matters affecting the community and the world. I hope that through this adoption of the resolution tonight, Takoma Park will join the many voices who have already taken a stand by condemning this cruel and needless practice. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Linda Kozad, and I live over on Motor Avenue, which is on the other side of New Hampshire Avenue, and I really like the T-shirts, by the way. And I've been a resident of Takoma Park for 7 years, and I'm really happy also to be living in a place where a resolution like this would be introduced by the mayor, and I just urge you all to pass the resolution. There are some practices that are just really too cruel to condone, and this is certainly one of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Any further council comment? All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Passed unanimously. And thank you for your comments and for your help in bringing this issue forward. We now have the consent agenda, and this is a resolution providing for reappointment to the Commission on Landlord-Tenant Affairs, resolution providing for reappointment to the Board of Elections, and a resolution supporting Montgomery County Bill 2308, creating a Veterans Commission in Montgomery County. Is there anyone who would like to move the consent agenda?
So moved.
I heard Councilmember Siemens move and Councilmember Clay second. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Consent agenda passes unanimously. We will now take a short break. We will reconvene at 9:25 on the clock in the back of the room. Report from the Board of Elections. Sorry we're running a little late, but
Whichever you're most
your preference.
comfortable with.
Good evening. I'm Ann Sargent, Chair of the Board of Elections. And we have a couple of brief things to go over tonight, which you have in your packet already. One is the work plan for 2008-2009, and the other is a letter in which we recommend that we have Scantegrity come in to speak with us again. And Jillian Aldebaran will talk about that latter part. So you all have the Board of Elections work plan here. I'm just going to briefly touch on everything because I figure you can read it at your leisure. But the main thing we wanted to do was put something together that matched our charter and also matched what additional stuff we thought we needed to do. So we broke it out into categories. First part is to establish the work plan, and we can declare victory there. I did want to say, though, that we're regarding it as a living document. There might be things that, as we research how we would do them, we find that maybe that wasn't the best idea in the first place, or maybe we need to do it a different way. So this is where it is today. It could be different in a couple of months. So the next piece, the next topic area is voter education and outreach, and you can see what we really want to do is encourage voter registration, increase voter awareness, and encourage and expand community cohesion, especially in the wards that have typically low turnout. And there's a big list of about 7 or 8 things there that we plan to do, starting with conducting voter registration training for Board of Election members. A few of us did it last year, and we'll have the folks who do that training back in this year to train the rest of us. And we plan, again, to have a voter registration booth at the Tacoma Park Folk Festival. We're exploring other places we might do that, but that's the big plan for right now. And I'm Community Tables Chair for the Folk Festival, so I can assure you that it will happen.
It might even have a good location, too.
That, too, yes. So the next step, number 3, is to ensure the election is efficient and promotes the voter satisfaction. So we want to make sure our judges are trained, and we'll have to design a curriculum for that, which will depend on the eventual method for voting we select. The next is to plan and conduct the election, and the goal there is to improve efficiency and accessibility of the voting process. Not that it was bad, but we want to make it better, continuous improvement. So we'll be thinking about maybe implementing other voting sites in Tacoma Park and seeing what it would take to do that, if space is available, if it would cost way more than ease of voting, things like that. Step 5 is to review election procedures and to find out, specifically we want to find out what voters think about this. Are there things that they would like that we don't have, or things that we have that they don't like within the law, of course, and we plan to survey voters for that. The next is to actually review election procedures, and we want to make sure that people can understand them. If they change a little bit, we want to make sure that people have information about that. And we want to actually, we've already accomplished a couple of these, everything on here now that I'm looking at it. So we've given the 2007 vendors some feedback. We've established criteria for the 2009 election based on a lot of some things we wanted in the first place and then what we've learned from the last election. And we've done some research on vendors and evaluated them, and then we've interviewed a few of them. And the main thing we want to do is make sure people are confident in our election. There haven't been any real questions about overall results here. Some people aren't that satisfied with the process, and we want to do what we can to make as many people satisfied as possible. The next part is to recommend amendments to election laws and regulations, and that would be a provisional ballot ordinance and also what people call no-fault absentee balloting, which is you don't need a reason, you just need to say, I want an absentee ballot, if that's what you want. And that would be consistent with the state procedures. And also provisional voting would be consistent with the state procedures. So we'll be proposing a draft that includes those two things for your consideration. And then we will also make sure we have a better way of updating the voter registry. Since we allow non-citizens to vote in Tacoma Park, when we have data for citizens, the county takes care of all that for us, and they've been a huge help to us in the elections. And the county doesn't maintain rolls of non-citizen voters. We do that here in Tacoma Park, and they're kind of big, and we're thinking that maybe some people have moved away, and we want to develop criteria for keeping the rolls of voters, non-citizen voters, current, or at least changing them to inactive as the county does. So that's the quickie overview. You'll see that there are some dates that actually have days on them, like June 30th or something like that, and some say ongoing, some say a season or a particular interval, but not a specific date to be completed. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Can you just say a little bit more about provisional voting? I think I understand what it is,
Yes.
but I want to make sure.
Yeah, provisional voting is when you come to vote and something is amiss. The registration hasn't been completed with voting at the county level, which equals the state level. It could be that you've registered by mail and you haven't shown ID yet. Well, actually, that's not provisional voting. Sorry. Provisional means you vote now, and your records and the correctness of your registration is checked after the fact. So vote now, check as soon as possible, and then your vote gets counted or not. And with the state, you can actually look up and see. They give you a number to call to see if your vote actually was counted. And it is a way of heading off some potential errors of the past, and also a way of keeping things more correct. Rather than turning somebody away, they get a chance to vote, and if it works out, that's great. There still are the same criteria for voting as with regular voting, though.
Right. And if it doesn't work out, they get notified?
They can check.
So it's opt-in in terms of how it goes from there. They have to do something proactive to see whether it counted or not.
Yes. Okay. Now, we don't have to make it like that.
Right.
But we would probably want to be consistent, I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Questions?
How do you tell now, or how do people become inactive now? I know when I was in California, if you didn't vote twice, you had to register again. I think that was how it went.
I am not 100% sure of all the details of this, but I know that you have to have not voted for a certain period of time, and the county, which is the surrogate for the state, has been unable to reach you with written things for a certain either number of instances or certain period of time. And then even then, you're not automatically removed from the rolls. You would show up if you hadn't voted in that, whatever that period of time is, and you came to vote, you would come up on the register as inactive. And then you would be able to vote provisionally. And it could be due to change of address or something like that. And then once all that stuff gets checked out, if you're eligible to vote and you haven't voted anyplace else, your vote would be counted that way. So the state has criteria. We'd probably want to be consistent with that as well.
Yeah, very, very geared towards making it as possible, because California's program when I was younger, essentially, if you didn't vote twice, that was it. There was no argument. You didn't vote provisionally or anything. But it sounds like they really go to great pains to keep people registered and active so that they can vote.
The descriptions I've heard make it sound like you really have to seriously not vote for a long time and never even turn up any place before you get even called inactive, and then you can still vote. It would be provisional.
Oh, great.
Other questions?
A quick update. When I talked with them a little bit, the county folks about it, they said that, because I had the same experience you did in California, they said that because of the using a database and it's all electronic now, that it's much easier to do the system they do now, which is allow you to vote provisionally and then see if you have in fact qualified, you still qualify and are eligible, that kind of thing. Whereas before it was all paper, and it was much harder to do that.
I will say it did motivate me to go vote even in the smallest election because I didn't want to have to register again.
Right. Now it's easier to register.
Thank you very much for your report. I'd just like to make one comment and a suggestion, and that is very encouraged and supportive of your effort to register more non-voters. And I would suggest that you consider contacting Ron Wiley. He is the executive director of the Adventist Social Service Agency. He has been interested for some time in doing some outreach in Ward 6 in particular.
We're on it.
Sorry?
We're on it. Ward 6 was one of the wards we especially wanted to pay attention to for increasing turnout because it is historically low.
Well, this would be perfect then, because he is about to start an initiative where some of his volunteers will go through the ward, calling on each of the households there, particularly foreign-born households, and introducing those residents to a range of city services, but also letting them know that they're in Takoma Park. Some don't even know. They think they're part of Silver Spring or some other community, but also bringing them up to date on the voting laws in the city and encouraging people to vote. And he may be a very good vehicle for you to team with in order to have an opportunity to get into some of those households to make this proposal to them. And I think that
sounds like he'd be a great resource.
Excellent.
Adventist Community Services, we have contact info.
Thanks. Oh, the other thing that's not in our work plan, but I just wanted to mention, is we do have a tiny library of 4 books about, the one I'm reading right now is called Get Out the Vote, which is actually pretty interesting. A lot of the things that everybody does to get out the vote, it turns out, don't really work that well. So we have some other books as well about electronic voting and related topics that we have in the library, and we'll be sharing them with each other, and I guess Jesse will arrange for a shelf for us somewhere to keep them.
Good. Any other questions, comments? Do you have anything else?
I don't have anything else, but I think Jillian wants to tell you about her letter.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jillian Aldebaran, and I guess that Ann was referring to the memo. The Board of Elections is recommending a vendor for the November 2009 election. We have, as you might notice from the work plan under issue 6, we've been doing a lot of work researching various types of election systems, election administration, to see really what would be the best solution for Takoma Park. Not that we've had bad elections before, but this was an opportunity to set out really the ideal criteria for running elections. There's been lots and lots of controversy, we all know, over the past, certainly over the past 2 national elections. And this year as well, Maryland, the entire state, decertified its electronic voting machines. So we thought, here is a good opportunity to see what's out there. There's a lot of brain power going into this at universities and nonprofit groups and everywhere, and that's precisely what we did. We went to all those kinds of groups, including commercial vendors, and talked to experts around the country. We are fortunate to have some local experts, like Rob Ritchie, for example, who was a great resource. And ultimately, we selected what is, it's a multi-university, and actually it's an international project because some of the people working on it are in Canada, called Scantegrity. The nice thing about, there's many nice things about Scantegrity, it's essentially some very small modifications of a fairly typical paper ballot, but that allow you to verify your vote and to audit the vote, and it's perfectly adaptable to AutoMark, which is a system for visually impaired voters. I even have a sample of the ballot right here. A very interesting thing about it is that it's marked, there are codes, random codes that are assigned next to each of the candidates. They're all different. I mean, on each ballot, they're totally different. And the way you mark the ballot, because it's printed in invisible ink, is you use one of these acid markers across it, and it reveals the code. So one of the problems that this kind of ballot solves is the voter intent problem, which you sometimes have with paper ballots, that people will write things in there like no, or they won't fill in the little bubble completely, so when you scan them, the scanner doesn't read it, and afterwards people spend a lot of time looking at these ballots and trying to figure out, well, what did that person really want to do? That problem is solved with this, because you can only reveal what's in that little bubble, and all you do is kind of wipe a marker across it, and that's what comes out. So anyway, Scantegrity would like very much, and we would like very much, for you to see a presentation of their entire system, and they would like to do that both for the council and for the general public.
A quick question from what you just said. How does that ballot deal with somebody who uses the marker and reveals the code and went, oh, that's not who I meant to vote for, I want this one?
Well, it's just like any other kind of spoiled ballot. You know how you get a couple of different tries. You can always go back and say, look, I made a mistake, I want another ballot. And right now, the system with paper ballots that we have is you get 2 chances, essentially. Third strike and you're out. But that's what we've been doing. That's what we did in the last election, in fact.
Questions? Comments?
Thanks. It all sounds great. I particularly like the Scantegrity idea. That technology looks great.
Well, you know, we actually have a much longer, more detailed memo that explains all of these systems. Plus, there's a lot more background information that we have and that the city clerk can provide you with if you would like more background on these systems.
And what we need to do is to affirm your recommendation so that things can proceed. Do we need to do that tonight? Do we need to do that more formally?
What the board is recommending is that Scantegrity come to Tacoma Park to do a presentation for the council and the public. I was thinking it might make sense to do it outside of a council meeting. It would probably be a lengthy demonstration, so I could poll the council as to what nights when you might be available. This would be in, we're talking about July, is that right?
Yes.
Dates in July that are not council meeting nights, so that it would be a night to focus on that. And those of you who want to be sure to be there, we can look for dates that work for the most people, or all of you would prefer.
Okay. What I was asking was, like the recommendation at the bottom of the blue sheet is receive the report. Do we have to take any action? Do we have to affirm that, yes, we want to go with Scantegrity? Does that come after their demonstration?
Right. I think you want to give a nod to go ahead, do the presentation, and then after you see the presentation, then thumbs up or thumbs down.
Okay.
I would also like to mention that Scantegrity has applied for a National Science Foundation grant. They are the winners of a national competition for voting systems in 2007 called VOCOMP. But they've just also applied for a National Science Foundation grant that would also support the work they're going to do in Tacoma Park.
So it would be free for Tacoma Park to conduct the
all the labor, the technical assistance, the development of the system is all free. The only thing we would have to pay for are some hardware costs, and if the National Science Foundation grant comes through, we wouldn't have to pay hardware costs either.
Right, roll it out.
Anybody not want to follow the recommendation of the election board? I don't see any movement toward not wanting to do that, so it sounds like we want to go ahead with the demonstration.
Great, thanks.
What we were thinking was that the demonstration could inform your decision, just to be clear about that.
Right, okay. But so far, I think we're informed enough to say that we want the demonstration. Good. Thank you. Anything else we need from you all? Doesn't look like it.
Great.
Mutually non-dependent. Good, thanks very much. Then we will move to the last item on our agenda, which is a report from the Recreation Committee. They've been sitting there patiently, but we've actually caught up a little bit, so we're not that far behind.
Oh, yeah.
Can we sit at the table?
And now we have police downstairs going, is there an attack upstairs? If the committee chair would like to introduce herself and her colleagues, and then
Thank you.
give us your report.
Shall I keep reading this whole time? All right. Kay Daniels Cohen, and I'm the committee chair for the Recreation Committee for the City of Tacoma. I'm the proud committee chair for the Recreation Committee for the City of Tacoma Park. And I'll let everybody introduce themselves and actually their area of expertise. This is the chair of Vice.
I'm Jay Keller. I'm the vice chair of the committee, and I'm not sure of my area of expertise, but it's not basketball. But I'm here in strong support of our winter basketball league, hopefully be.
I'm Natalie Sims. Of course, I'm always interested in more art
More
classes.
I'm Peter Munger, and I'm on the Indoor Sports Committee, subcommittee of the Recreation Committee.
How many subcommittees do you have? Two. Indoor sports and?
More art.
Okay.
Actually, the second subcommittee is really involved with the Mosaic project and the renovation, how that's going to impact all of us. So, you all have had the report in front of you. How should we proceed, Mayor Williams?
Oh, give us an overview of your recommendations.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, in the small letter, the cover letter, it really says our first priority is expanded programs. And I think that's what you're going to find throughout the report. And what will support the expanded programs are strong and active partnerships, more volunteers, and marketing. And of course, as you read through the report, we say how we're going to, we say what we believe, and then what we recommend throughout the entire. And I'm going to say again, expand the program, partnerships, more volunteers, and just because 1991, 88 to 91 was a long time ago, there were probably close to 80 volunteers involved in the recreation department at that time, and for whatever reason, it's just kind of dwindled. And that was probably close to 3 full-time people for a year's worth of work in those years, and it had built up from none all the way up to about 80. So that will certainly enhance expanded programs. And then again, outreach and marketing. We want to try a few different ways. We've been in touch with the Thunderbolts to talk about our basketball league.
We're going to be in the parade talking about our basketball league. And how many coaches do we have?
We've got 5 or 6 already, or 5 or 6 people who have already expressed interest in coaching the Winter Basketball League, and that's even pre-advertising and talking about it. So there's a lot of enthusiasm, and I think one of the exciting things in the committee is that we've got 15 on the committee.
14.
14, and every meeting I've been to, we've had nearly the full gang there for all the meetings. There's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm for joining with the rec department and really, backstopping them on a lot of things and helping spread the word and generating enthusiasm. So that's just a great thing going. And I think we've got some incredible expertise on this committee.
Recreationalists, I think, is the word I used in the cover letter. The computer didn't like that word, but a lot of recreationalists and capable people. And it's an exciting and high energy bunch to work with. Really.
Other than you, of course.
All of them, everybody. I mean, Alice, Pete, everyone, all the basketball people and the art people, because we want to expand the programs with better partnerships, more volunteers, and marketing, outreach and marketing. A lot of the things that you all saw in Greenbelt, trying to use an e-letter, utilizing any kind of a listserv that we can get our hands on. PTA, the basketball league, the soccer league, all of the neighborhood associations. Because, yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I thank you for this report. I think it's a great first step in getting the recreational programs on track here in the city. I think the rec committee has come out of the chute running and has really provided some good recommendations to the council. I hope that we can react in kind and kind of get our actions together with the same speed and quality that we see from you. I think there are a number of things that this council needs to do, and to incorporate both your recommendations and also to give much clearer direction to the city staff members on what we expect from our recreation programs. I think it's imperative that we share our vision, that we have a vision, and we share it with the department and with you, so that everybody's on the same platform as far as what it is that we want to accomplish, and that we, I have things I certainly want to see in the vision, but until this council all agrees to the vision, staff members are left to wonder which council member they should be responding to. I would like to see us offer a variety of programs that address the recreational needs of the very diverse community that we have. And I think we can express that in a vision statement in a way that gives clear direction to city staff. I would also like to have us say very clearly that we want to maximize the use of the community center and the other recreational resources within the city limits before we start spending money to do things outside of the city. I think those are things, just a couple things that I would like to see in the vision. I'm sure that all the council members have ideas that they would like to see. And then I think it's important that we set some goals for all of us to try to attain with recreational programs, and not just with the rec department, but with all city departments. The council's been talking about this. This is certainly not my idea, but it's kind of the direction that the council's been headed in our discussions through the budget period this year, that we set goals for departments so that, again, we know kind of what the target is we're trying to hit, so when we start shooting out programs that we can tell whether we're doing a good job or not. And that leads me to the last thing I wanted to say, which is, we need to be able to look at what we have done and what's worked and what hasn't worked. And so, and this is really, I guess, to the city manager, I think it's important that at the budget time, we saw the various programs and number of attendees for the 2006-2007 period of time. I think it's important that we get those numbers for the just completed or just about to be. What date is it? It's, I guess
Today.
Today's the last day.
Almost July.
The completed, I think we're past closing time now, so for the just completed recreational programs in the same format so we can compare, well, how did we do this year compared to how did we do last year, and how many, what programs do we have were well attended, what weren't so well attended, not as a way of grading anybody, but as a way of seeing how do we move forward from here in crafting new programs. Other than that, I just go back and thank you for the work that you've done in this on this recommendation to the council. I think it's great. Really glad to see the talk about the basketball league and bringing that back. I know it's very, very important to my constituents within Ward 4, but I think it's also very, very important to recreational programs within the city of Tacoma Park. Thank you.
Councilmember Barry.
Yes, thank you very much. I really appreciate your enthusiasm, and you've got a great group of people here on the committee, known in years past for being very active and very creative and contributing a lot. And it sounds like this is following that tradition. And I also thank you for giving us 4 very good policy recommendations. One would be the expanding programs, the other is the partnerships, volunteerism, and expanding the marketing efforts. All seem to be reasonable, and these are things that give us a point of departure in our policy discussions, which are lagging a little bit behind your recommendations, but we intend to catch up so that we're completely on parallel tracks. Of course, expanding programs is a little bit different than expanding participation. We can expand programs, but unless they're the right kind of programs, we're not going to see the number of participants rise. And then just a couple of other comments that I just scratched down for myself here. One is the concern I have about our staffing. We don't have a huge number of staff in the rec department, and we have to be careful about not overwhelming them with so many new activities that we simply will not have the professional staff to support them. And this sort of gets to the heart of the meaning of partnership. How would you define partnership?
You want me to go?
Well, I think it's working with pre-existing organizations like Long Branch Athletic Association. I think it's working with the PTAs and the listservs. It's certainly, I think, really the basketball league came from a sense of you've got an incredible job with the soccer leagues in the spring and the fall, and the baseball leagues. But in the winter, there's kind of a gap, and kids are inside. And those of us who are parents with young kids, boy, winter is a time you really want to get them out running around. And so we saw this as a great opportunity to do a program that kind of fills that gap in there and can really work with stuff. But I think the partnerships are really, I think as you said, there's a concern that you've got limited rec staff, and so how do you expand the work we do without overwhelming the rec staff? And I think that was where the sense of expanding the number of volunteers in the program to get in there and have them help out and do a lot of the programming stuff, where detailing over to the staff would be much more, booking the gyms and kind of things that they've got some real expertise and kind of a good overall knowledge of. So I think there's a strong appreciation among the committee that we didn't want to, develop 25 different programs and just overwhelm the staff, but that this winter basketball league, and I think the Mosaic and the art projects are just great ways to start things off, where we can have a good partnership both for the committee and the staff and other existing partnerships.
Agree. I think that's an excellent response, and I do think that these two activities, the Winter Basketball League and the arts program, are great ways to pilot and learn together, so as to really put some meat on the bones and identify the kind of tricky mix that's involved in when you've got three major stakeholders, or perhaps four. One is the committee, the staff, the council, and then the general public. It'll be an interesting dance, one that we don't always immediately know the steps to, but as we get going, get out on the floor, and the music starts to play, then I think we're going to find that right mix and balance. And of course, even when you have lots of volunteers, it becomes a management concern, because you've got, if you have 80 of them, for example, how to divide them up, how to provide the leadership and the direction that they need, so that they're all dancing to the same beat instead of going off on their own. I think that the marketing part of it is really exciting, and this of course again gets down to the partnering part, because I sort of view it as maybe, at least in the beginning, and for these two major activities that you will have, as more of you than it is of them. That is, these new channels, the outreach that you will conduct, a lot of it, especially in identifying some of the newer things that you have suggested here, much of this will be on your shoulders, but of course very carefully coordinated with the staff. And I assume you have a liaison relationship now with people on our staff, and that will be so important in getting this going, to have that relationship. The last point I wanted to mention is what you had mentioned earlier, and it's in this document, and I think it's one of the most important things that's here, and we talked about it earlier on in the evening, and that is the importance of being inclusive in all of our activities, and not just to assume inclusivity or the slogan of inclusivity, but the fact of it, because we do have two Tacoma parks in some way. One is divided by the socioeconomic differences. Another might be race or ethnicity, and it's so important to try to, in a very strategic way, to overcome this gap that exists here. And I think the winter basketball program can be a great way to do that, but it can only be done successfully if we are successful through the partnering in finding the kids and the families in order to participate in this, to make sure that it's the widest possible representation. Even if there was an advisory group of some sort that you, in your volunteer capacity and working with the staff, and including the staff, particularly those that are close to those kids who are part of these socioeconomic minorities, as a way of trying to involve them to a greater extent. And I don't see it here, but I think it's implied. The very important facility that we have on the other side of town, which is the New Hampshire Avenue Rec Center.
It's there.
It is there.
Oh, it's in there.
And then the importance of making sure that the new program activities and outreach get over on that side of town, because that's where there's a huge need there.
Our next meeting as a committee in the fall, the first fall meeting, will be, if we can work it out, in that facility.
Right.
So that as a committee, and our homework is to go and see it if we haven't.
Right.
See what it looks like now, see how it is right now.
Right. Because we have a wonderful staff person over there, and he's so innovative and creative. And
Very exciting.
Exactly. And he really has the trust of those kids, and I think that he'd be an excellent resource for you going forward. So I congratulate you on this report, and I think we're going to have a really great path-breaking year.
The report itself was actually done, partnered. It wasn't just written by one person. The whole committee, everyone had input, including the staff. Deborah and Gregory were very, very helpful in their assessment and assisting us, because we every so often went down the wrong path. a little bit, not knowing that who was a partner and things like that. So
Very good.
we really appreciated that.
It's excellent. I guess my closing remarks have been, and what they've been all along in the months that I've been sitting up here, is, don't try to boil the ocean. Identify a few winning things, and it appears like you have a couple, and develop those first as pilots. And you've got the art portfolio in this room, and visioning what we're going to have here in the future, and this is a huge undertaking, again in partnership with staff and council, and that's going to be a big deal in the coming months. And then there's the whole sports side of it, the pool. It's going to be an enormous undertaking, and I guess we need to help each other through this by making sure we don't go off in 1,000 different directions. Try to narrow the focus and get a couple of successes under our belt.
And you started with what's a partnership, and I think a partnership it's a 50-50. I always say at the meeting it's not a marriage, but it's which I think is 90-10. But a partnership is actually 50-50, making sure that and there's compromise and negotiation and making sure everyone is served.
Yes.
I agree
And
totally.
the staff might not always be 50 because they have other duties to perform in addition to this, but I know that they'll be with you to the extent that they have the capability, and they have the capability, but the number of people, that's my concern. Is they're stretched thin. We have not funded one of the vacant positions now until we have a better sense of comfort about the direction the whole program is going. It's clear that position will be needed in a major way as some of these things get going. So my concern is that you don't get overwhelmed, we don't get overwhelmed, they don't get overwhelmed. And I think you've done a fine job in outlining these very worthwhile projects, and we're certainly, I personally am very eager to work with you going forward. I think it's going to be a really stellar year for all of us.
Councilmember Clay.
Thank you all. You certainly turned your report around much faster than the TASD committee did.
And she can say that having been a member of the TASD
I was a
committee.
member of the TASD committee, and I enjoyed every moment of it. Actually, I did. But yeah, it's great. You got all this stuff back to us really fast. I want to ask you about one thing. You've got your 4 components on the vision for Tacoma Park Recreation, and the very first thing under expanded programs, which is your first thing, is to achieve this standard of success, we recommend that the council establish policies that encourage increased participation, including low program fees to entice a wide range of participants, fee scholarship for residents who cannot afford regular fees, and minimal restrictions on the involvement of non-residents who are otherwise engaged in Tacoma Park through school, church, community activities, or work. We feel this can help build a stronger, more cohesive community and ensure success of recreation programs that rely on a critical number of participants. So, who wrote that? Was that written by the committee all together?
I think there was a general concern that you've got to have this critical mass of kids involved in the program to have a successful program going. And then if it's too restrictive, you end up with 2 basketball teams playing against each other each week. It's no fun. So to try and jumpstart things and get them going and build that enthusiasm and build more and more participation, we had quite a few discussions just about, how do we do that? How do we bring kids in who might not otherwise be involved in the process? And so it ranged through discussions of, what do we charge for fees to do that, and how does that kind of separate people out to, do we reach out maybe a little bit beyond the borders of Tacoma Park, and a discussion about that. And I think, again, Councilmember Berry and a number of others talked about this as really being some pilot programs, and we wanted to try some new things, and we wanted to strike while there was lots of enthusiasm among the committee to get the basketball league and the arts program up and running pretty quickly and make it successful. So,
well, the reason I ask you about this is because my position on this is, except for the more fee scholarships for residents, is pretty much antithetical to what you put down here. I used to work in recreation. I was the Marine Sports Education Coordinator for the City of Oakland. And what we found was that we could charge enough money to generate program income. We had to be self-sustaining, essentially. Generate program income and then turn around and use that money for greater scholarship dollars. And I know one thing that we're strapped for is scholarship dollars. So when we're looking at the budget and kind of coming up against, you know, we only reduced the tax rate by a half a cent this time, whereas, you know, the constant yield was below that, and there's a lot of pressure on the budget. So all these things, if you have low program fees and a lot of scholarships, and then you take Tacoma Park tax dollars and you spend them on people who don't live in Tacoma Park, and you add all those things together, if you were to do that across all the programs, it'd be really expensive. And so I guess what I would look for would be some kind of balance. I think in some programs, like I ran sailing programs, and in the sailing programs, you could charge people a fair amount of money, but so for example, I charged $125 for a 1-week camp, and it cost me $70. Once I had 20 slots. Once I had filled 10 of the slots, I had essentially paid for all my labor for all 20 slots, and then everything else was kind of gravy. So once I got over 10 slots, I had kids who come down and be like, hey, you know, I want to sail. And if I could get their parents to sign the waiver, you know, I could let them into the class. And, you know, you could kind of watch out for those people. And then I also actually we had a formal scholarship program, and we asked people, it was essentially an on your honor thing. They'd fill out the form, and then we would decide whether they get a 100% scholarship, a 50% scholarship, or a 25% scholarship. Usually we just did 100 or 50%. And so we got and that was a change from what we did before. And that changed our program from a pretty white program to a much more diverse program, which in sailing is hard to do. And then we had other programs that were much more open access, and they tended to be the things that didn't, you know, boats have a lot of cost. They break, kids run into each other, going 20 knots, and there's a big hole in the boat, you got to fix it. It's expensive, so you got to generate some money. But we also then were able to use some of the money from some of the programs that we had to be able to do much more universal and lower cost programs for other folks. So we had like a General Mariners program where people, we did education, we did kayak tours, we drove them around in the power boats, and then I used some of the money. I ran a summer SOAR program for low-income kids out of the college, and we sailed to Angel Island, and we rode in the Coast Guard Zodiac, and we didn't charge, I think, $20 for the week for that camp, and it was targeted at lower-income kids. And so we had like a range of programs and provided a bunch of different kinds of service models, some of them specific to at-risk kids, some of them really integrated with all different kinds of folks, and then some were the more standard fees we used in the more traditional programs. So an example here would be the after-school program. So you'd have a fee structure in the after-school program that was a more significant fee, but then you provide more scholarships for folks. I think I heard a figure one time that we had $9,000 in scholarship money for is that for the whole rec department or for the after-school program? And I think it's $1,800 for like both before and after care. So for the whole year, we could only do full scholarships for 4 people. And so what I would really like to look at is how we could, I'm sensitive to the issues too. There are people in the community, we want to serve them. We don't want them hanging around on the corner in our community. But I just wonder if we couldn't find a good balance so that we could do this in a different approach, essentially.
I think it's a very good point to figure out a structure where you can get people who can pay a little bit higher level, and that gives you the scholarship money to kind of do it after, as opposed to kind of keep it low at the start and end up with a program that is too expensive to run. So I think that's a great suggestion that we should.
And I understand it's a perception problem, because the problem that I had was convincing people that they could come and sail and I would let them into the program, because that's kind of the other side of it, and you have to balance that as well, which is why I think it was good to have different programs, because we had these entry-level programs that brought people in, and they were cheap, and everybody would come, and that would introduce them to the other kids, and by then you knew them, and you knew who you had to scholarship into your other programs, and you had this kind of feeder system.
Well, and one of the things I'd like to find out is, I know the baseball and the soccer leagues have both done for years, sign up at $70, and here's my extra amount for scholarship funding, stuff like that. And I don't know how much extra income they get from that and how much of a difference that makes, but that's something I'd like to talk to some of those folks about and find out how that works, if it works well. But
I think,
very good suggestion.
Yeah, I think this was written with exactly what you're saying in mind. So that it wasn't going to cut out a section of our community. It was going to be for everyone as much as possible. That's exactly why we put it the way we put it.
I think what this reflects too is more of a need to kind of jumpstart the program and get it moving quickly. While one of the things that we were cognizant of is a couple people who would join the committee were on there saying like, well, we really want to get this up and going. And if a year goes by and there's not a winter basketball league and there's not an arts program going, and it's a year gone by and we go, we've accomplished nothing.
Go home.
The committee's going to die.
Right.
And so there was a sense of get that going, but I think there is an appreciation on the rec committee of, okay, it's tight financial times, we need to figure out ways to make the program work and pay for itself too. So.
And our goal in the basketball league is at least 200 youngsters, kindergarten through 8th grade, and 20 teams. So, and the more that we have,
Well, in my head, when I think about the different recreation programs that are offered, the basketball league would be an example of a program that you would want really low fees in and bring as many people into the recreation as possible before you feed them into some of your other programs.
Councilmember Wright and Councilmember Sniffer and Councilmember Rounds.
I agree with much of what Colleen and Doug said. The one comment I would make, I know we want to have focus, and I think I commend you for choosing two things and planning to do them well. The only thing I would probably add is connected to the outreach and marketing is I think we really committed when we put forward the money for the pool. I would like, to the degree you guys could spend a little time really thinking about creative ways for us to market the pool and really give that to yourselves as sort of a specific goal, so that when the fall rolls around or the new school year rolls around and the pool's back open, that we at least make people aware of all the open swim times, and it's kind of ubiquitous across the city. We may not do programming yet. I understand you probably don't want to engage in programming quite yet on that front.
It's just, it's actually just moving forward. Ron Wiley met with Montgomery County last Thursday, and I was privy to that meeting. And it's actually moving forward probably faster than we can even imagine. That's pretty exciting. We're getting bids on management companies. We're involved. The game plan is to open the pool in September with the grand opening, and we were considering the way the District of Columbia has opened their summer programs in the past, where the mayor of the city does the cannonball into the pool. And so we thought that was
Cannonballs I can do.
So, we definitely are going to have a big grand opening of some kind. I hate to say banners, but some way of letting everyone know. As soon as everything's set with the county, everything's all right, Adventist Community Services, we're all in calm waters. We'll come up with something.
However, to do Cannonball properly, I'll need at least a week of private practice before the pool opens.
Got it. You got that. We'll get you someplace before the pool opens.
Also, calm waters and cannonballs don't quite stop.
Be ready with the hose to fill the pool back up.
Councilmember Sniffer.
Yes, thank you. I did have a concern with, I really applaud the design you have. I think it's a great idea to do, focus on two things, particularly those two things. And as long as you add the pool, which I had in my little notes too.
It's in there.
Yeah, it is. That'll be really great. And I think it's a really excellent direction to bring back a lot of volunteers and do partnerships, because I think that's one of the things that's really adds value to the community, the people who volunteer, as well as for the city itself. It builds on something that we have in Tacoma Park that you don't have elsewhere. I do recognize that people do seem to be more time challenged than they used to be, so it could be a bit of a challenge to get as many volunteers as we used to have, but I do think you'll get plenty of volunteers for it. But I did have a concern I wanted to raise with something that Colleen was discussing, which had to do with discretion with regard to fees. I think we have to be very careful and not use discretion when it comes to fees. I believe there has to be an established procedure. This is it's a constitutional issue. And I think the city needs to follow that. That is, there has to be a clear set of criteria and standards for who pays full price and who gets a discount, who gets a scholarship, and that there be a published procedure for how that happens, or we'll run afoul of those kinds of ideas.
Councilmember Robinson.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this together. I kind of scanned it for recommendations for the council and other recommendations, and I'm looking at it with a kind of a picky eye, so I'm going to give you a couple of picky questions after kind of reviewing. One on page 3 is we recommend that the council endorse the formation of active working partnerships between the department or committee and other community organizations. I'm just going to leave that there. And to preface it all, you know, I've tried to envision the committees, the city committees, in part as research committees, because we need feedback from you about how we're doing and how our staff is doing and how our programs are doing and so forth. So I have that kind of in the back of my mind of, well, what information, what specific kind of technical almost information are we getting back from you? So noting that recommendation of the first one there on page 3 of these active working partnerships, and then others on starting in the second paragraph on page 4. One there is establishing a comprehensive system of one-on-one relationships with community groups to inform them of recreation programs. Another is to solicit feedback on a regular basis, and then a third one is setting up roundtable discussions with representatives to discuss current recreation programs and find ways to enhance or add to them. As others have noted, the cost of more programs and how to balance all that is certainly a consideration. But these kind of steps of one-on-one relationship, feedback on a regular basis, roundtable discussions with representatives of the groups, and then active working partnerships between the department or the committee and the community organizations, those ostensibly all have kind of reporting aspects. In other words, these relationships and these discussions and so forth, there's going to be fruit from those discussions, and that's the kind of research that I'm very curious to hear. What will come of those conversations? What will the feedback be? How will that feed back into a kind of a dynamic environment of committees, the committee, the department, the council? This is as Council Member Barry alluded to. Those three groups, you guys, them's guys, us guys and gals and so forth, and of course the public. How will that stew simmer? So I'm just kind of bringing those specifics that you put in here and saying them back to you, saying I'll be very curious to hear the results of those conversations. And of course we have Deborah, you're in the audience, and you're an important part of this, and I'm assuming that you, and you said, Kay, that that staff and Deborah have been involved in these recommendations already. So I'm assuming that this is a work in progress, and that Deborah, that you kind of signed off or have given a sense that, yes, this is a good direction to go. I don't think any of us want to be in a position of having you come back and saying, well, we thought we were on the same page, but really we're not on the same page. So I'm assuming that this report reflects meetings and discussions that have already taken place with our own rec department staff. I'm not looking for a direct response to that kind of statement right now, but I want to make that point very clear. I hope that's a fair point to make, and I want to make sure that that comes back to us.
I think the fact that we start with, I think it's in the second line of paragraph 1, and an organizing partner with the Recreation Department. I think that word, it runs throughout the document, and it will have to work that way. We need, not have to, but we have to be partners.
Right.
To be successful.
To be successful, and partnerships require communication. It won't happen by being quiet. It requires talking to each other. So that would require us meeting, or the department meeting with partners, us meeting together, however we do it, and then meeting with you and with the public.
Right. And
all of the above.
And we're, there's the status quo of where the Recreation Department is now. Where are they now? And that's another important element to this. You have some creative ideas how to push us forward. You have a couple of examples of where we can go. Those are good. That's going to mean a shift in where the rec department is now, which means that there'll be specific goals that I'm assuming that reflect, and part of those goals are already in this document, but they will reflect the discussions that you and the rec department have, and that will inform us as to what those goals will be, which will reflect what rec wants to do and what you want to do. And that's for us, kind of the research coming back to us to consider. I'm kind of going on here. I hope my words have some relevance.
I just think one of the things that we talked about throughout all of our meetings is really using the recreation program to build, I think, what we all have as a goal of this kind of community center. And it's this building, but it's beyond this building. It's kind of bringing people together throughout Tacoma Park. And I think when you talked about kind of this almost little feedback loops of talking to different people in the community, and how we do outreach and marketing is also how we get feedback from different folks to figure out if the programs are working or not. And
right.
Hopefully it's how we also attract people to go, I'm going to go find out what's going on in the rec program. I'm going to get down to the community center and find out what's happening. And we really wanted to figure out ways of bringing people down here to really find out what's happening and how they can get involved and how they can volunteer or get their kids to join the program. That really was kind of a center part for the committee.
And I'll just say that there's already a set of goals that the rec department is pursuing.
Yeah.
And they have their own sense of who they're serving and who we're serving. And that there has to be kind of a syncing up with that, so that, because they do their own outreach. We all do, through our rec department, do our own outreach now. So.
And let me say that it was very helpful that Councilmember Robinson pointed out the various places in your report where you recommend that we take some action or reinforce some of your goals. It was very helpful to kind of have that pointed out again, and many of those highlighted, so that it makes it obvious that we need to have communication with you all as well in terms of how we receive it. I think that the general response is that this is so far an excellent piece of work, and that we agree with your priorities and your vision. I note one thing when I look at the committee that we have named and that you're operating with, and that you've got 14 of the 15 slots, but I don't see anybody from Ward 6 on here. And I think that it would really be good for us to try and figure out who from Ward 6 could get that last slot and kind of bring that section of the city into these discussions on the level of the committee discussions. We've got we're pretty top-heavy on wards 1 and 3 on the committee, and we need to find ways to get more people involved from particularly wards 4, 5, and 6 to make sure that our efforts are successful in getting a broad spectrum of people involved in recreation department and in programs and in bringing them to this building and in making people aware throughout the city that we have the other facility over in Ward 6. And I know that there are some continuing discussions that we need to have with staff and with the county and with the task force that the city manager's been working on in terms of how the funding goes for that and partnering with the county on that. But I think the hopeful note from the partnership on the Piney Branch pool may provide some ways to move that along, and I look forward to the continued efforts of everybody involved to make the pool a success, and it sounds like that could very well be the first one to come to fruition, and it's going to happen pretty much at the end of the summer that we have now entered, and that's the time when it sounds like your committee isn't meeting again until the fall. That we can't let that one fall through the cracks. We've got to be ready with publicity and outreach and make that happen, because if it doesn't happen in that, whatever it is, 10-month period, 9-month period starting from September, I have no doubt that the county will pull the plug on the pool. So
We're going to meet before the summer. We're going to have another meeting.
Councilmember Siemens.
Just a quick question. You all came in with basketballs, and I'm concerned I didn't see any paintbrushes.
She brought the basketball. I forgot. It's a mental creativity.
It is.
There you go.
It's omnipresent.
Yeah, they're going to
more art.
They're going to incorporate the basketballs into the art project.
Well, exercise in art, that makes you a rounded, wonderful person.
Is that going to be Jackson Pollock and Michael Jordan combined or something like
Yes,
that?
absolutely. And we will be in the 4th of July parade. This is the first time, I think, since, I hate to even, 91 maybe it was a little bit later than that, but the Recreation Department and the committee have been, we're going to start meagerly, but we will be there. We'll be there with a banner, with more art, with a car, with decorations. Greg Clark did an incredibly gorgeous, breathtaking banner for the basketball league, for the coaches for the basketball league. Really exciting.
Wow.
Quite well done.
Good.
So, and we just, I know the cover letter says this, but we really appreciate this early opportunity to actually focus on our goals and our vision so that we can really make a difference for the city of Tacoma Park. And we appreciate the opportunity for you all to hear our voice. We really thank you again, as always. It doesn't happen in every city in the country.
Well,
Well, it's great to get feedback from you, so we have a little more
There you go.
direction on what we need to accomplish.
This is the first tiny step. We have a long ways to go.
Yeah, keep up the good work.
yeah, and please let us know anytime you feel that you need to come back and talk to us, because we need this to continue in close cooperation.
Absolutely.
And if any of you want to sell raffle tickets for the 4th of July, just talk to Terry.
I'm selling already.
Thank you.
I'm selling for Bell.
Any other questions or comments? Anything else the committee has? Thank you very much, and we're adjourned.
And thank you.
You saved the best for